huge amount, despite the fact we're on 7.4.
Well, we've seen a big shift towards, ever since 7.3 and 7.4, is the Shen being a big value target right now. A lot of teams really value the champion, and he's often banned on blue side because the priority is to try and get yourself Varus. Champions like him have real no counter pick, which is why he's now shifting over to a red side ban. And we're seeing a lot more Camille being left open. Now in regions like the LMS, Camille isn't actually a very valuable pick, but here in the West, she is still high priority, so much so that you'd even be willing to put her on support.
Oh yeah, how did that work out for Vitality in the end? Unfortunately, not as well as they would have expected. There is the Varus ban. Camille is still available on the table. Ziggs is still up there. What else would you consider when you think about both of these teams?
Well, the fact that Giants have banned away Varus implies that they're looking towards an early jungle pick, so you could go for something like a Graves. Memento did have a fantastic Graves performance in their game versus H2K in week 5, where he was able to out-jungle the First Blood King very early on in the game. Whereas if you're Splyce, fascinating that he actually banned away the other strong AD carry, because you would imagine that you'd leave this open so you could get it on the second half of the rotation.
All right, so obviously that means the Ashe and the Siva go up in priority here. HeaQ has played Ashe in the past, also has a game of Misfortune in his back pocket. The jungle pool's still available as well for Trashy. This is the guy that I'm going to watch all series long, because he simply hasn't had the same level of impact that he had in the 2016 season. And there we go, with obviously the 2 ADC bans. Ashe is locked in. The Camille was open though.
Well, this comes back to what we were talking about early on, right? Where Camille is being left through more the draft now, because I guess teams are finding answers to her. They feel that she's very reliant on having a good start, transition into the mid game. And what we saw from IEM is that if you can play aggressively enough during the early game, that is a great opportunity to shut her down. You can pick champions like Renekton to shove her underneath the turret. Champions like Poppy scale nicely into the mid lane game against her. But Splyce, they have answered and they said, well, look, if the early game is where you need to get Camille ahead, let's pick an early game jungler to back her up.
Yeah, but look at who's piloting that champion, who's piloting that jungler. Trashy's early game has been very questionable. I'm going to use my words very loosely here. But now there's expectation, right? Early game jungler, top laner, that could be a mid laner, that could be a support. Because remember, Camille is that flex that we've seen Caps ran it in the mid lane. We've seen it support a couple of times, the Renekton, as you've mentioned. Where do Giants go with their next pick? Likely the Graves. That's kind of the meta champion, isn't it?
Well, there's a bit of debate right now as to whether or not they want to go a little bit more early game with the Lee Sin, or whether or not they go for the high priority of Graves, where he has better scaling towards the mid and late. He can trade pretty effectively early, and one of the great things about Graves is if the Elise is not careful, he's actually great at clearing out her spiderlings in a 1 versus 1. But regardless, right now, Giants are set up for success because they have, depending on the support, they're setting up nicely for a powerful push lane in bottom. I'm thinking they're heading towards the Karma pick, something that Hustlin has valued a lot in the past. We're also looking at a high pushing top laner with the Renekton. So now if you want to round things out, you want a big pushing mid, but Fastlane Splyce have said, well, I counter your push with more push.
Ziggs ADC is what we're expecting here, obviously, for Kobbe in the bottom lane. But what is this open in terms of phase 2 bans? Malzahar's taken off the table here by Splyce. You have to feel that Karma is, high priority. We saw the power of Ashe Karma at IEM as well. Syndra's still available in the mid lane if anyone wanted to go that route.
Given that both right now roles have been matched, there's no real need to pinch roles. You're just trying to ban away stuff that you really don't want to play against. The Malzahar's being taken off the board because of the fantastic pick power that it would have when synergizing with the Ashe. It also is a great tool against champions like Camille, because when she ults in, it's very easy for the Malzahar to lock her down. It also adds a lot of pushing power up against the Ziggs, which is kind of what you want to avoid. So the fact that they banned away the Tahm Kench is a little bit surprising, though, because in my mind, Giants' priority is to go for the Karma. They want that big pushing power in the bottom lane. You already have engage with the Ashe. Now you need his follow-up tools, and what's more better than having that big team AoE speed up from Karma, right?
Definitely. What is more better than that?
What more better?
Well, Giants have got 4 seconds left to ban out the final champion. It's going to be Jace, removing some of that poke power from Splyce. Wunder's going to go for the blind Gnar, adding it to a plethora of champions that he's played in the top lane, and that also means Camille's likely mid lane now.
Splyce have said, well, Vitality, you thought you could flex pick, I will raise you. Gnar, most likely top lane. I think we can safely say that is a top lane Gnar. Now, the Camille could go support or could go mid.
What do you think of a Camille Ziggs bot lane? Hextech ultimatum into Mega Inferno Bomb.
What?
There we go. Like,
I mean, yeah. Yeah. The risk you run is, like, the thing is, Ziggs doesn't actually have the best pushing power at early levels. He already spikes once he's completed the Lost Chapter. And within that window, you can actually get very heavily punished if you're laning with a melee support. So I'm a little
confused.
Concerned. But Splyce still have their final pick. There's still windows for them to move around. And I think that Camille can do just fine into the Ryze as well. So I think that Splyce would be safe to put it in the mid lane should they want to.
But they don't. It's a Syndra. There we go. So it is going to be the Ziggs Camille bottom lane. Syndra mid. You know what I'm noticing here? Two teams that did not go to IEM, Splyce and Vitality. Maybe they've been scrimming each other. Maybe they've been practicing the Camille support. This is complete hearsay and me making up nonsense on the spot. But how on earth do you make sense of the Splyce composition?
Well, they want to try and get pushing lanes, right? Well, the thing is, early on, the Renekton will still have push over the Gnar. But once he gets a couple levels under his belt, once he works towards the Black Cleaver, Gnar is going to do fantastically against the Renekton because he can kite him so effectively. You have a Syndra in mid who naturally has a lot of pushing power and pick priority set up nicely with the Elise. Like, Splyce have built themselves a very early game team. Somewhat, I don't want to say snowball-y per se, but there's a lot of room in their composition to try and get an advantage ahead. And I think this is great because we saw from IEM so much more proactivity from international teams trying to get this early game advantage. And now teams in Europe are saying, well, we want to try and get an early game advantage. We want to play more towards that style rather than the scaling mid to late game.
More of an early game advantage is something Splyce have not been able to do at all this split. Last split, they were famous for having a weak early game. Let's see if this is the week where it turns around. There's a team composition that could enable it. But Trashy on a champion that in 2016, he had less than 50% win rate on Elise. It's his first time in 2017. Now it is time to put up or shut up. Obviously, man, on your screen, Wunder next to Trashy. They're loading up here. It is Splyce taking on Giants. It is another week of cross-group play. Giants, of course, number 4 versus Splyce, number 3.
And looking at Giants, their composition is, standard, I suppose, relative to this Splyce composition, right? Like, you have a Ryze, which Knight has played a lot of in the past. HeaQ, bringing out the Ashe. He played a lot of this early on into the split and has shifted away from it since the lethality changes came out. But you've also got Hustlin on this big, beefy front line in the form of Nautilus with the Renekton up top lane. So they have this, they have a meat shield for the high DPS carries behind them with the Graves who can be that sort of mid between the middle and the back line. The front and the back line, sorry.
The mid-front line.
The mid-front line, right?
Okay.
But it's good scaling, it has good pick power, it has good team fighting, it's very well-rounded.
The thing that I like about the Giants composition, every single champion wants to be on the front line, obviously with the exception of Ashe, but like Graves, Renekton, Ryze, Nautilus, everything about their kits is go, go, go. Create a death ball that continues to run. There is a Giants pause. It is a mouse-related problem with Flaxxish, as our technicians are investigating it. Let's go to this unconventional team composition. Yeah. Blind Gnar. It wasn't blind because it was into the Renekton, actually. Yeah. So opting into that. We've got the obviously early game jungle, but Ziggs and Camille. We don't see a lot of Ziggs ADC. At least in Europe.
We've seen it a couple times. It's not the most picked AD carry, but you can pick it into high AD compositions, for example. We saw earlier on in the day G2 actually ban it away because they were afraid the Vitality would go towards it to compensate for their high amount of AD. But the big thing about Ziggs in particular is he's all about pushing and setting up for taking down these structures. And when you look at the composition, like Syndra's kind of low range, it's very easy to catch her out of position given her low mobility when trying to set up sieges. You've also got Gnar, who's also pretty low range. Elise, like the great thing about Ziggs is he actually makes up for the difficulty that Splyce will have when it comes to walking up to these towers and taking these structures down.
Yeah, going to be able to execute those towers. All right, there, Wunder. I think he's having a moment.
This is how they communicate in the mother tongue. Yeah. He said, I am thirsty, friend. Let us have a drink sometime.
Oh, I like your interpretation of that one, Vedius. But yes, I'm interested to see how this range advantage plays out. We've seen one previous Ziggs here in EU. I think it was actually Fnatic that played it. Did pick up a win. And Kobbe's going to be hoping for the same. Flaxxish with a face check here. Crocodile walks into the bush and a Yordle runs away.
But I really want to backtrack to your point that you made very heavily in Champions League because Trashy on this Elise, right? To the viewers at home, you probably heard a lot more about analysts talk about these early jungle paths where they now start on the Raptors. The reason is you can get level 2 very early on by taking that jungle camp, meaning you can then transition over to the red, and then you do your full jungle clear. It's very common on champions like Graves. And what you look to do is your mid laners will shove as much as they possibly can because they want to get a ward on that Raptor because you want to try and contest it when it looks to respawn. Because if you can deny it from your opponent, it is so much experience taken away from the enemy jungle. It gives you a lot more freedom and control, and it's basically a big advantage that teams want to try and pick up. So the fact that neither of these teams went to IEM but are adopting this style is great to see, but it's a big question mark as to whether or not Trashy and how well he can perform with this early style of jungling.
Yeah, exactly, because it's contesting on that next spawn, the level advantage, the pick power. And we'll track Trashy, who's moving over to his blue buff, and Grumps stepped on top of a Giant's ward, so he will get spotted out. I think there was a ping. At least I did see that one, and that's the ward. Thank you, observers, for highlighting it. And Trashy can clear out that Grump. Looking at the lanes, Wunder is about even with Flaxxish in the top lane. He's traded back and forth, and we caught a glimpse of Mikyx using that hook shot and pounce onto Hustlin and HeaQ, playing very aggressive despite early levels, not even waiting for that lost chapter or scaling. Just
now, you would think that when you have a Nautilus Ashe, they actually have quite a lot of pushing power, but because of how aggressively Mikyx's playing and how difficult it is for the Ashe to trade back early on, this is enabling Splyce to get a good push down in the bottom lane. Sencux is doing the same. Now, I think this is a bit of a... I wouldn't necessarily say a mistake because Sencux wants to get back as quickly as possible, get his first item, and now they're better set up to go and try and contest those Raptors. But I feel like he should have dropped the ward that is being dropped right now from Trashy.
Oh, look at that. Mikyx again. Satchel charge as well. Very good trades. Using that passive shield for Camille to just come out ahead in what feels like every trade. Tower dive possibility here at level 4, at 4 minutes. What needs to happen here for Trashy to make this work?
Well, he's on the Elise. He's a great tower diving champion. The only thing that concerns me for Splyce is do they have enough damage against the Nautilus? TP is up. Looks like they're going to try and set up the dive.
Okay, let's take a look. Here comes the hook shot. Connects onto Hustlin and HeaQ. Instant teleport from Flaxxish. The exhaust is down onto Trashy. Retreat is the call. Splyce run away. Wunder and Flaxxish cancel their teleports. Looking at the mini-map, I can see Memento making his way to the top lane, but Wunder, a lot of HP and a flash available.
Looks like Memento should be able to get the flank on Wunder. He's just lost Gnar.
All right, there's the bounce over the minions. A flash away defensively under the tower. Summon a spell just for showing his face. Advantage to Giants in the top lane, but looking at summon spells, advantage to Splyce in the bottom lane.
And that's the big thing. The likelihood of Splyce being able to get kills in the bottom lane is very, very low, as we now see Trashy in the mid.
All right, Unleashed Power finds the stun. The cocoon goes wide. And Trashy ends up taking more damage than he bargained for.
Ooh, Knight being zoned away from this minion wave is going to really hurt him in terms of experience and farm. But this is actually a big deal, right? Because, so, just to backtrack, what happened in the bottom lane, the likelihood of Trashy being able to get the kills down in bottom was very low, simply because of all the summoner spells that were available, and it's against the Nautilus, who is very good at dissuading tower dives. But they were able to burn a lot of summoner spells, so you're setting up better on for another tower dive later on into the game. Look, the Lost Chapter has now been completed for Kobbe. this means that they're going to have so much more pushing power in the bottom lane against Giants and better setup for that dive as we progress.
Mikyx, unfortunately, not going to be able to defend that ward. And right, Splyce pressure on them, right? Make the tower dive happen, take advantage of no summoner spells. And we'll see if they can improve on that early game as Hustlin and Mikyx about to go toe-to-toe. Let's talk a little bit about both of these teams' early games, Vedius, because, you know, Splyce, despite 4 series wins, 3 series losses, Giants 1 and 5, neither of them have very good statistics. You're looking at first blood percentage for the teams. Giants, 50% of their games. Splyce, 25%. Then you look at first dragon, first towers, and for me, the biggest one, gold difference at 15 minutes. Splyce are behind 700. Giants are behind on average 1,500 gold, which is a significant amount in the early game.
It's not a great sign for both teams when they have very similarly early game compositions or very driven around the early game. And neither of them really have typically done well in the early game, but now we get to see whether or not they can successfully do it. And I'm pleased with what we're seeing from Trashy so far. He's sacrificing some of his farm for pressure, but I feel like that he should be utilizing this to try and steal away some of the camps. He's had a good dive down bottom. He's now sitting in the top half of Giants' jungle, clearing away some of this, and now he's gonna look for a dive on top. You have to be very careful against a Renekton. Yeah,
Dominus is available as his flash. Looking at Giants again, early game, deep vision pushed all the way into Splyce's jungle. Memento's clearing out that wolf camp. 1, 2, 3 wards.
Good vision. Good vision.
Yeah, very good start to this early game. It's definitely like the vision themed week at the moment because it feels like every game we're showing it off, but keep looking at your mini-map every time because it really does exemplify how much information these teams are working with.
It's really important for you guys at home to just understand how important vision is at this point in the game, because the thing that impressed me the most when watching the KT versus SK series is how often both those teams would start big fights just purely over wards. Like, they would move into the enemy jungle and you would have a full-on 5v5 team fight just because they were contesting a control ward. Because that is what allows you to set up for Dragon. That is what allows you to set up for Baron. And these early game wards that have been pushed into the enemy jungle allow you to not only steal away camps, but let you steal neutral objectives, and they better set up for things like dives so you can take away these early teams.
So it's interesting, right? We've got two teams that have had slow to, you know, weak early games coming up against one another. We're even at 8 minutes. Kind of expected, I think. You know, neither team really showing proficiency at taking advantages early. As this game starts moving towards the mid game, 10, 15, 20 minutes, who sort of comes online better? You know, obviously Elise is always going to be great at tower diving while there's still towers up, and obviously the power of a TP Gnar probably a little better than the power of a TP Renekton, assuming you've got that Gnar bar. But where do you favor them, Vedius?
I feel like it's really tough because Splyce, you kind of want to say they have a good team fight comp, kind of, but Syndra's not really the best team fighter. She has a lot of single target damage, and she's great for setting up picks, which Elise is also good at. All
right, Unleash Power, insta-cleanse from Knight. He's able to escape, and now Sencux takes a burst of damage. They get the cleanse at least, but not the most awe-inspiring of ganks. We need to see a little bit more go-hamness.
The thing about Elise, though, is that her early game power doesn't necessarily have to just come from ganks. It can be her ability to do things like this, right? You're supposed to utilize the fact that you have a pushing lane in Syndra and a pushing lane in Gnar, so you can easily invade into the enemy jungle and take away these camps from the enemy team. That was a misplay.
That's an oopsie. The blue sentinel gets bored and does not want any of the Splyce shenanigans. And that's just going to delay them 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Blue buff still secure.
And he doesn't get it!
Oh my word. Did Trashy pick it up?
Yeah, Spiderling's got it.
Oh, scumbag Trashy. Not cool, bro.
That is a massive feels bad, man. But the big thing about this is the fact that Memento was able to go back, and now he's already completed his jungle item. Trashy now doesn't have a window to do that, because Giants are already back on the map. They're looking to start setting up vision, having this eyes on Dragon. So it might not seem like a lot, but it could very well be a big thing. It's Wunder.
Doing so good. Every time we look top, Wunder is just using that hyper 3-shot passive to his advantage. All right, Mikyx looking for the knocker. Wow, Memento gets bursted down. First blood picked up by Kobbe. Now they turn their attention to Hustlin. That's a tactical sweep. Flash available for Sencux. Is he going to use it? Doesn't look like it. The bouncing bomb comes out. Connect finds Knight. That forces the flash away. Mikyx, though, able to escape. And Splyce, they just find Memento in the river.
That was a surprising amount of damage from Kobbe. You know, AD carry Ziggs, like, how badly can he hurt? Like, he's only got components of his Morellonomicon completed, but when you take the full combo, you really do take the full combo. And Memento ended up losing his life. Now Mikyx is looking for another dive on mid.
I think there's an ultimatum on Knight's life. That's going to be the target. Flash forward. Hextech ultimatum gets put down, and Knight, he's going to try realm warp away, but he was still locked in the baby cage. You're not allowed out. You have to finish the fight. Now Mikyx's running away. Wunder flashes over the wall, turns his attention onto Memento. There's a lot of damage. Memento finally goes down, not before getting a triple kill. A Gnar into the wall. Flaxxish and Hustlin, they're trying to crush him down. A crunch forward, throws with the boulder toss. One more auto. Now Flaxxish wants to finish it off, taking a couple more autos. The heal, the stun, and Flaxxish finishes the fight.
Big, bloody fight very early on into the game. Both Giants and Splyce looking to be as aggressive as they can. But it was Splyce that were the initiators. They realized, hey, there's an opportunity for us to dive in the mid lane. There might be a window for us to try and force our opponents away from this tower and get this first objective on the board, and they commit very hard on tonight. The problem is it takes them a very long time to kill him because Hustlin comes in from the flank. They thought that they could just nuke him out well before the rest of his teammates come, but by the time Memento joins the fray, this is where things start to fall apart for Splyce. They end up losing 3 members to this Graves, and one day he's just left to try and clean up the fight. The big thing though is notice that both AShe and Ziggs are left down in the bottom lane, and an AShe versus a Ziggs, you'd think, that shouldn't be that, that shouldn't be that bad for the AShe, but he actually gets a lot of damage taken. He ends up getting forced back, and this allows the Ziggs to get priority on the tower.
Yeah, so tower first blood as well. Look at that damage. This is obviously because Memento picked up a triple kill. We'll continue that discussion in a moment. Knight, he sidesteps at least the stun. Cleanse is available. Mega Inferno Bomb comes down. Memento hanging around on the side, but more support coming up here for Giants. Splyce, 1,500 gold in the lead. Even on kills, they've got that tower first blood, as we mentioned, and 2 Morellonomicons picked up, so already hit that first item spike.
And now we're starting to see how valuable this combo of Ziggs and Camille actually is. The arrow comes flying through.
All right, but nothing else connects, so Crystal Arrow, and unfortunately Hustlin unable to get the dredge line.
So you'd think in lane, okay, how does this combo even make sense? And it didn't really. However, once you get a couple of levels under your belt, once you actually have the pushing power on Ziggs, he can actually sit in the lane by himself and just clear. He can just constantly push the wave underneath the turret, and that allows Mikyx to roam. And that's why we've seen him so many times move up towards the mid lane, put all this pressure down onto Knight, and it's allowed Splyce to get these very early objectives.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Splyce are going to lose one. First dragon of the game, going to go to Giants. Giants have had superior vision here the entire time, but the problem is, it's a single dragon for what is now 3 towers. Splyce got middle, Splyce got top. The gold lead is spiked to 3,000 lead. And Splyce, they're looking to dive. I mean, Flaxxish, he's been bullied by Wunder all game long. No flash available yet, as you want to try to get over the wall. That's a decent stun from Scatter the Weak. The tower's going to fall. That's 3 towers for 1 dragon. That is not worth it.
Splyce, they'd set up for this play well in advance. They realized that they had to be pushed through the jungle to the top side once they had taken down that mid tower. So as they were leaving, they were getting all this division down in Giants' top half of the jungle. They saw an opportunity to try and take that tier 1 in the top, but then they realized, hey, if Giants are going to commit to that dragon, this leaves a very wide window for us to continue pushing. Giants cannot respond fast enough, and Splyce are able to get a really good advantage. This is the early game play that we wanted to be seeing from Giants. It's not about snowballing in terms of kills. It's not about trashy ganking left, right, and center. It is playing around the vision and is around enabling and utilizing that vision to punish the mispositioning of Giants and net an objective.
I think that's a great point, because it could be about Trashy going ham on Elise, right?
I mean,
it could be.
Yeah.
But in this context, in this game, conceding that bottom quadrant of the map around the dragon, and then just playing more proactively everywhere else. So props to Splyce. 15 minutes in, they've got over 4,000 gold in the lead. Their average up till this point was -675, and Sencux, he's going to give his life here. Just instantly burst down by Memento and Knight.
He just wanted a ward, man. He just wanted a ward. I feel like in that situation, if you want to be nitpicky, Trashy could have used his spider first to check the brush, make sure it was safe for him to do so. Sencux also could have thrown out the ball to stun. It's never safe to face check, Trevor. Never a safe thing to do.
No, only on tanks if you're a top laner and Alistar if you're a support.
Yep.
That's what I learned yesterday.
Or if you're a god.
All that, but not today, Sencux. He face checks and dies.
Yep. But it's okay because Splyce won't lose that much pressure on the map for it.
Memento's Graves, 4 and 2 at the moment. 65 creep score. Doing very good in the early game, and this is a champion that scales pretty well in the mid to late game. He had a great game on Graves last week, as you mentioned. And Memento's been one of the shining lights on Giants. Now we need to see the rest of the guys start to step up here. Flaxxish has been bullied all game, and if he's already behind Gnar, I'm very worried for the next 5 to 10 minutes.
It's fascinating how we see these adaptations in the draft where people picked Renekton as an answer to some of the tanks because you have this pushing power, and then some people will go, well, let's early pick the Renekton because he's actually just a natural lane bully, and there are very few answers that can deal with him, and now you have this adaptation of, oh, well, we just need to pick someone that he can't bully, and in this case it's Gnar because he has a range advantage, he's exceptionally good at kiting, and Renekton's biggest weakness is how difficult it is for him to get onto a target and then stick onto that target. So Gnar is just the perfect pick into the Renekton.
Especially if he's gonna get this Rift Herald buff, which I expect he will.
We saw Trashy steal away a blue buff earlier. You can't tell with this guy.
Oh yeah, you can't, but not this time. Sencux not gonna make the mistake with that force of will.
Oh good, my jungler's top, I can get my blue now.
Picking it up, and Splyce are just in a very good spot. The 10 to 15 minute period was very strong for them. Knocking over a bunch of towers, finding a bunch of kills. Sencux has cleanse and flash available. He's gonna need instant fingers if that AShe comes out, and unfortunately, no threat just yet.
They look like they're going for a flank right now. They have the good vision to set it up.
All right, Hextech ultimatum. Hustlin's the man that's stuck inside the cage. There's a teleport coming down from Flaxxish inside the pit. Tactical sweep onto Memento. Giants are somewhat split up, but all of a sudden, so are Splyce. The Mega Inferno Bomb's already used. Giants backing away. Knights use the cleanse, and that's a great Gnar into the wall. Giants have lost 1 and 2, and it's Sencux with the double. Giants are routed, and Splyce win the fight.
Splyce is successfully able to split up the lineup of Giants, and that is all they need to find the key targets. HeaQ, he'd already burnt all of his summoner spells earlier on in the exchange. There was little that he could do to get out of that situation. Splyce they'll net themselves another tier 2 tower and move towards setting up good vision control. So you can see Wunder, he was moving long before this play even started because they wanted to try and get this flank off. It wasn't quite in a perfect setup because they didn't get the ideal flank, but then HeaQ realizes he can't contribute to the fight. This wall is separating Knight and Memento, the main damage dealers, from Flaxxish and HeaQ, and that means that HeaQ, he's left out to dry. There's nothing that he can do against so many gap closes and so much pick power that Splyce has to lock down the AD carry.
Such a great advantage here for Splyce. It just feels like they're a level above Giants. You know, it feels like they've made better decisions on the map. In the fights, we're seeing better mechanical plays, and they're coming out ahead in almost every instance.
And while that may be apparent in this game, the biggest criticism I have with Splyce in the past is their ability to play around Baron. Because when you look back at their series versus Fnatic, they had advantages, but that only came from the fact that they were playing 50-50 Barons all the time. Splyce were a team that basically said, look, right, we're in the mid game, we have an advantage, let's try and play around Baron. They don't properly set up vision, and instead, they leave open the window for the enemy to steal away this objective. And that's why they are the team in the league that has the highest number of Barons stolen away from them. 4 Barons have been taken away from this team because it is only an objective that they know how to play around.
Yeah, but the problem is, Splyce have had more Barons stolen, but Giants haven't touched a Baron in 6 games.
6 games?
Vedius, 6 games puts you all the way back to week 2.
Wow.
Week 2. Giants haven't had a Baron in 4 weeks, 4 days, and 22 hours since playing on stage. That's how many games they've lost.
That is a long time.
How much behind they've been their respective opponents. This 7,000 odd gold lead is the largest gold lead Splyce have had at 20 minutes against any team.
So what you're trying to tell me, QuickShot, is that it's hard to have a Baron stolen from you if you've never seen a Baron before.
Exactly, exactly. But it's one of those dynamics, right? When Splyce start the Baron, will they improve and not give Giants a chance to steal? That's the question. Splyce have had 4 of those stolen. 4 times they've started an objective. This time they're not going to rush it because they don't need to. They've got a great siege power with that Ziggs, and they're just knocking over the towers.
And the greatest thing that Splyce could do in this series is win without the Baron being a priority for them. If they could just play side lanes effectively, if they can use this great siege composition that they have to just slowly break into the base of Giants, that is the ideal way to win, rather than relying on the Baron as a win condition to close out the game.
Yeah, I quite like that. Great growth here from Splyce in the opening match against Giants. Opening game against Giants.
So far, there's still a lot of time.
Oh yeah, but I mean, look, it's just good to see fairly clean play, you know? For a team that has had a tough opening to the split. Expectations for Splyce were top 2. I mean, we talked about the Deficio Crepo tier list at the beginning of the split, and there was a few question marks around Splyce, but the expectation was it's the same 5 guys, it's the same, you know, support structure. They grew so much over summer, and unfortunately it feels like they regressed and they have to do the same. This game though, Wunder is having a field day. He really has just smashed Flaxxish.
Hey guys, if you didn't know, Gnar's pretty good into Renekton. If you are struggling in your solo queue games, Gnar is always a safe pick. And you don't even have to properly know how to use Mega Gnar. You can literally just sit in a side lane like Wunder is doing. You go for the Frozen Mallet and the Black Cleaver, and the Frozen Mallet is core because it just adds to your ability to kite the alligator or crocodile or either one of them.
What is he? I actually don't know.
He is a reptile that carries a giant weapon of destruction.
Someone let us know on Twitter. Is Renekton a crocodile or an alligator? I'm sure it's in his lore somewhere.
Or is he the president?
What the base was. We'll have to find out. All right, so you can feel Baron starting to be the objective here. Mega Inferno Bomb comes down. Ashe Arrow is going to tag out. Memento gets a kill onto Mikyx. Depth charge flying across. That's a massive Gnar. Wunder knows how to ulti, but he's flashed over the wall. He's left the rest of his team. Could this be problematic? Flaxxish is forced to run away. He's able to slice past the cocoon, and Knight uses the Realm Warp to safety. Mikyx, the only victim of the fight. Wunder should be able to run down Hustlin very easily. It's a 1 for 2 in favor of Splyce.
Promising fight for Giants. The fact that Splyce grouped up into a narrow choke point set up beautifully for the Ryze and the Graves to get off an unbelievable amount of damage, but it's also a window for Wunder to come in and turn the fight on his head. Fantastic ultimate coming out from Wunder to keep his team alive, because that could have gone extremely well for the Giants if they had been given a little bit more room to utilize their damage.
You can't have room when Wunder gets an ulti like that.
Exactly. But look, you can see Splyce, they're just filing into this choke point, and look at Knight, look at Memento. They just have the freedom to get all this damage down, but it's when Knight finally joins the fray and is able to lock up all the members of Giants that they can start fighting back.
We haven't seen a lot of Gnar in recent times, but watching Splyce start that fight with the expectation that Wunder's going to have Mega Gnar available to instantly land the TP and connect, that is very good communication, and that's something that Splyce need to keep using and utilizing if they want to push this game further as cleanly.
The criticism I do have for Splyce is that while that may have been the expectation, the execution was not as on point, because it did take Wunder a little bit longer than they would have liked for him to join the fight, and if he was there from the start or nearer to the start, perhaps it would have been a much cleaner fight for the side of Splyce. Regardless, they end up coming out with the kill advantage. Yeah. They now have good vision control around the Baron, and they may have just caught Hustlin.
All right, they have caught him indeed. Teleport not available. Mega Inferno Bomb forces HeaQ out of the fight. Hop forward from Wunder. There's no Mega Gnar available, but hell, he doesn't even need it. Flaxxish and Hustlin easily killed by Splyce. 5 on 3. They're peeling back. Vision is pretty good for Splyce, and they're setting their sights on the Baron.
And there's that combo that you talked about in Champions, like QuickShot. The Camille ultimate. Yep, the Hextech ultimatum. Extremely effective at forcing out champions like Ashe, who are very squishy, and now Splyce. This should be a pretty clean Baron take. Very unlikely that they'll have this one stolen away from them. That's just another Baron denied from Giants.
Really, really good play here for Splyce. 25 minutes in, plus 10k. Wunder almost continued the chase, but there was a blue trinket behind Giants. So I feel like he spotted the guys, and This is going to be a replay. Mikyx, I mean, he's been the primary initiator here for Splyce the whole game long.
He really has. Mikyx has been a fantastic initiator for the team, and it just easily sets up the rest of his team to get that great damage from the Ziggs ultimate as well as the Syndra. So this is the first time I think that we've seen a Camille been effectively used at all points in the game. I think that when I went and saw gameplay him, it was like 50-50 in terms of like maybe a weak early game, but now Mikyx may be caught out.
Well, manages to sidestep that dredge line, continues to back away. HeaQ's putting a lot of damage. Mikyx decides to re-engage, gets the passive shield. Depth charge comes up with the bouncing bombs and the boomerang, and all the damage melting Giant's HP bars. Wunder's about to Gnar out. The baby cage locks Flaxxish in place. He's stunned against the wall. The GA has popped, and production has told me that he is a crocodile, not an alligator. The age-old debate is settled. Splyce have destroyed the inhibitor at 26 minutes, and they're looking for the Nexus, Vedius.
I have nothing but praise for Mikyx in his ability to set up these fights. Time and time again, he has been the reason why Splyce come out ahead in these fights, and they're going to be the reason as to why they take game 1 in this series.
Clean, controlled, powerful win for Splyce over Giants, 1-0.
26 minutes and 45 seconds. This was the early game team that we wanted to see from Splyce. Could they utilize this Elise? Could they utilize this interesting composition to try and get an early advantage and close things out?
Do you know, I wonder... I mean, Wunder on Gnar was a big reason they won that game. Very big impact. But I wonder if, even if the champions were different, could Splyce have done the same? It felt like playing around the vision. It felt like punishing Giants for maybe not being there to defend towers is something that snowballed that early to mid game.
Well, I think that we have to look back at the draft, because the utilization of Camille in the way in which he can be flexed to all these different roles was fantastic, because it gave them a winning lane in top, it gave them pushing power in mid, and it gave them pushing power top, which means that Splyce had the ability to allow Elise to be as aggressive as she wanted. And while we didn't see a huge amount of aggression in terms of early snowballing, we saw great utilization of the vision and their ability to push things up. And then every time Giants tried to make a move, Splyce had so much vision over the map that they could then punish somewhere else. And they made these cross-map plays consistently, which is where their golding came from. It was not from scrappy fights, it was from pure good tower control.
In Summer Split last year, there was this really clear notion that Trashy was the primary initiator. This game, it was all about Mikyx as the primary initiator. Congratulations to Splyce. They've taken game 1 over Giants. Let's head over to the analyst desk to take a closer look at exactly how that happened.
Thank you very much, gents. And indeed, Mikyx was like a man possessed, always flashing in and setting up his team. And that, of course, comes from the interesting draft that Splyce brought. They had some time off, they had some time to practice and come up with some things. And I loved it that they brought out this exceptional team composition. What did you guys think?
I like it. I think being able to flex the Camille is an obvious strength in the draft. Mitch, you were joking during the game that, hey, the kid's so great.
Yeah, I mean, Camille has been nerfed enough right now. The top laner is like, you know what, this champion, it's not broken. Let's leave it open. Oh, Renekton sounds good. And then support's like, oh, what's that? A champion with a lot of kind of built-in CC, almost like beyond suppression to lock somebody for skill shot. I'll take it. I'll play it. Gay played it once in America, and now I think we'll see more of it come back.
I love the combo also. You as like a bottom lane purist, you know, an AD carry and a traditional support. What do you think of the Ziggs Camille combo in that sense?
It's a little strange for me, Shocks. You know, everybody knows me as a traditional just Jana player. But no, I like it that you can go in and just get targeted all in for the Ziggs. I just hate Ziggs AD carry in general. I think it's useless. But it worked for Splyce.
I think it's useless unless you get yourself in positions where you can actually utilize that satchel charge against towers, right? And honestly, that's what Splyce did with this. They were able to get in front of towers, and not only that, get kills with it early on. You can see they didn't even have the Hextech ultimatum to start this one off, but it didn't.
So useless, by the way.
Yeah,
wow.
Dying with Flash and ulti up in 2017 as Graves. Yeah, Ziggs is a fantastic pick overall, but this was definitely one of the kind of key points in the game. It looked a little rough for Splyce. Over-eager engaged, but then they got so many kills funneled into Wunder. He became the split push powerhouse, got even more leverage over the Renekton, and that kind of sealed the deal, I think.
I think it was nice from Giants' perspective to still see that Memento was still having a decent game. Like, he was picking up kills in the fights, and so far as that aspect, he was doing his job, but the rest of Giants just seemed behind on a lot of the players.
Yeah, but right now, on the end of the replay, bot lane was a Ziggs with double buffs, so guess what's he going to do? He's just going to push, push even harder, not even lose any mana. Then he took the turret, and then in the next like 5 minutes, Splyce went mid, top 2 turrets. They demolished everything, and then yes, you can use Ziggs. And I think Camille is a great enabler for this champion to really get the kind of skill shots, force them to hit, you know, force the Ziggs minefield to be in a great location, and then get honestly, the AoE Inferno from that bomb.
Definitely, and well, there's teams that can have an exceptional composition and then can have a bit of a lead and have a good fight, this and that, but what really stood out to me this game was that Splyce wasn't passive at all. They did take every chance they saw for a good engage. Mikyx was a big part of that, but all 5 people were on the same page.
And I think a lot of that stems from Wunder's Gnar. We saw it in the summer split once or twice when Gnar was a meta champion in every single game, and you know, he was just pushing the entire time, and then ends up in the fight.
Yeah, but this is Mikyx, you know, creating just a window of opportunity. And then, as you said, Stress, from that window, it is right to the wall behind Dragonfit right there. That's what Wunder is doing, because it's a slow charge up fight where Mikyx is just buying time, Trashy's buying time, and then Wunder can charge up, and then Sencux and Wunder together can unleash. And this is reminiscent of Splyce early summer 2016, where they got behind or had slow early games, but then in a couple key fights, they would kind of smash open the game. I think this was somewhat similar, that the game was played very slow in the first 10 minutes, but then 2 really good fights snowballed the right members forward, and then Splyce could use their knowledge of the game to close out.
Definitely, and that they did, and they are on a good footing to, well, take the entire series if they do that again. What is a must-take off the table for from Giants to Splyce for next game?
I think the Gnar, just because it's so comfortable into the Renekton, so many teams have been happy to just blind pick Renekton and just go, not too many ways around that. I think it's too good for this draft.
Also, he's also good into the tanks that we usually see, like Gnar, like played into Maokai or into a Nautilus, should be able to do fine. And I think Flaxxish hasn't shown enough individual skill. If we can get Flaxxish just on a tank and have Wunder on something that can't punish him too hard for it, I think it's a better outcome for Giants.
All right, we will see what happens. We're going to go on cooldown, but when we return, game DOS between Giants and Splyce. See you soon.